Time passed gently in the mountain sanctuary. The days were calm and filled with simple tasks: gathering food, shaping stone, repairing small shelters, and watching Ash grow stronger. The little dragon no longer wobbled when he walked. His wings fluttered with more confidence, and his bright golden eyes held joy instead of fear. Ethan felt himself settling into a new kind of life, one he had not expected to find. There were no battle alarms, no orders, no war cries, only soft mornings, warm fires, and the gentle company of Lyra and Ash. The silence that once felt heavy and lonely now felt peaceful, like the mountains themselves were giving him a second chance. But even in peaceful places, change always comes. One morning, Ethan stepped outside the cavern to gather wood. The air felt heavy, and a strange hum traveled through the ground. It reminded him of the stories Lyra had told about the unnatural force that had once stormed through the mountains. Ethan put down the bundle of sticks and listened carefully. Ash, who had followed him playfully, suddenly lowered his body and growled softly. His wings flared in alarm. Ethan knelt beside him, gently placing a hand on his head. "Easy," he whispered. "What do you sense?" Ash's golden eyes turned toward the ridge above them. Ethan followed his gaze. A faint, cold light flickered between the rocks. Then another. The air felt still, as if something was waiting. Ethan stood, tense. Lyra should see this when they returned to the cave. Lyra immediately noticed the fear in Ash's small body. She placed her hand on his back and closed her eyes. For a long moment, her face grew serious. "It is the same energy," she whispered. "The one that destroyed our old home." Ethan felt his stomach tighten. "It's coming back." Lyra nodded slowly. "It is moving through the mountains again, searching, devouring warmth and life wherever it crosses." Ethan looked at Ash, then at the entrance of the cave. "Then we can't stay here." Lyra hesitated, her eyes filled with worry for her child. "But where will we go? This sanctuary is strong. It is protected by the mountain's heart." Ethan shook his head. "No place is safe if that energy keeps moving. We need to find the source. If we don't understand what it is, we'll always be running." Lyra looked at him with surprise. "You want to face it?" Ethan took a slow breath. "I've spent my whole life running from things I didn't want to face: fear, memories, loss. But Ash deserves a safe home. And you deserve peace." Lyra's eyes softened, filled with emotion. "You're brave, Ethan. Brave in a way even dragons respect." Ash chirped loudly and pressed himself against Ethan's foot, as if agreeing. Lyra touched Ethan's arm gently. "Then we face it together." They packed quickly, taking supplies and water. Lyra carried Ash on her back in a small cloth sling Ethan made for him. The little dragon kept glancing around nervously, sensing the strange energy growing stronger. The journey toward the ridge was steep. Cold wind pushed against them, and the ground shook lightly with every few steps. Ethan felt the same hum in the air, natural, almost metallic. It reminded him of old battlefield weapons, powerful enough to tear apart mountains. At the top of the ridge, they finally saw it. A swirling mass of pale blue energy hovered between two cracked stone pillars. It moved like smoke but glowed like a dying star. The closer they stepped, the colder the air became. Even the plants nearby were frozen stiff, covered in thin white crystals. Ash whimpered softly. Lyra held him close. Ethan narrowed his eyes. "What is it?" Lyra stepped forward and touched the air cautiously. A shockwave rippled through her fingers, and she pulled back quickly. "It is not natural. It is not from this world. It feels like a tear." A wound in the mountain itself. Ethan studied the swirling energy. Memories of old war technology flashed through his mind: unstable portals, broken engines, failed experiments. "It could be something left behind from the old galactic wars," he said. "Something damaged." Lyra frowned. "Whatever it is, it destroyed our home, and it will destroy this one too." Ethan took a deep breath. "We need to close it." Lyra looked at him with uncertainty. "How?" Ethan stepped toward the energy, feeling its coldness sting his skin. "The same way we fix broken machines," he said. "By understanding it, by finding its weak point." He reached slowly toward the glowing mass. The surface rippled like liquid light. Ash cried out in worry, and Lyra grabbed Ethan's shoulder. "Be careful." Ethan touched it, just a light tap. The energy pulsed hard, sending a wave of force across the ridge. Ethan stumbled, but Lyra caught him before he fell. The swirling light flickered, revealing a small core inside, dark, cracked, and pulsing dangerously. "That's it," Ethan said. "The core is unstable. If we break it the right way, the entire tier will collapse." Lyra shook her head. "If it collapses too fast, the shock could harm you." Ethan smiled slightly. "I've faced worse." Lyra stared at him for a long time, her eyes full of worry and something deeper, something that had been growing slowly between them. "Then we do this together," she said firmly. She shifted into her dragon form, wings spreading wide. The glow of her scales lit the ridge with blue light. Ethan climbed onto her back, holding onto the strong ridge of scales between her shoulders. Ash sat in Ethan's arms, trembling but trusting them both. Lyra lifted into the sky with one powerful leap, circling above the swirling energy. Ethan pointed at the small crack inside the core. "There." Hit it with controlled fire, just enough to weaken it, not destroy it all at once. Lyra roared softly and built a small flame in her throat. With precise aim, she released a thin beam of fire. It struck the crack exactly where Ethan pointed. The core shook violently, and the tier began collapsing inward again. Ethan shouted. Lyra released another controlled flame. The crack widened. The swirling energy tightened like a closing eye, shrinking faster and faster. The tier collapsed with a final bright flash, then vanished completely. Silence followed. The cold disappeared. The ground stopped trembling. The air warmed again. Lyra landed gently, and Ethan climbed down from her back. Ash leaped into the snow happily, chirping with relief. Lyra shifted back into her humanoid form. She stepped close to Ethan, her eyes soft and shining. "You saved us," she whispered. Ethan smiled. "We save each other." Lyra touched his cheek gently, her expression full of warmth and gratitude. "Then stay with us, Ethan, stay. Not because you must, but because you want to." Ethan looked at her, at Ash, at the peaceful mountains now safe again. "I want to," he said softly. Lyra's smile grew warm and bright. Ash jumped between them, flapping his little wings as if celebrating the new life ahead. And together, Dragon Mother, Humyn Veteran, and Little Dragon, they walked back toward the sanctuary, ready to begin the family they had built through courage, trust, and quiet love. The path deeper into the mountains felt different now. Ethan no longer walked alone with a small dragon tucked into his coat. He walked beside Lyra, who moved with calm confidence, her steps light and graceful even on uneven stone. Ash hopped between them, sometimes climbing onto Ethan's shoulder, sometimes flapping his tiny wings to reach Lyra's arms. His joyful chirps echoed across the cliffs like little sparks of life for Ethan. The journey felt unreal. Just days ago, he had been living in silence, believing his story had already ended. Now he was following a dragon widow and her child into a hidden world, one he had never imagined. He would see. Lyra led him through narrow passes and silent valleys. Broken rocks and burnt marks still scarred the land, signs of the storm and the strange force that had passed through earlier. But as they walked farther, the mountains grew quieter and calmer. Mist drifted around them, glowing slightly under the fading sunlight. The world felt ancient, as if it carried memories far older than any human city. After a long climb, Lyra stopped at the entrance of a wide cavern. The inside glowed faintly with soft blue crystals, lighting the stone walls like tiny stars. "This is the place I want to rebuild," she said softly. "It is safe. The storms do not reach here." Ethan stepped inside slowly. The cavern was deep, warm, and shaped almost like a natural home. Pools of water reflected the crystal lights, and small plants grew between cracks in the stone. It felt peaceful, almost sacred. Ash ran ahead, chirping loudly as he explored. His little feet echoed across the cave. Ethan smiled. "He likes it." Lyra watched her child with gentle eyes. "He has missed a home for too long." They spent the rest of the day cleaning the space. Lyra used her strength to move large stones, while Ethan gathered fallen wood and cleared dust from the floor. Ash tried to help, but mostly ended up tripping over small rocks or making enthusiastic but unhelpful noises. Still, watching him try made both Ethan and Lyra laugh softly as the night grew colder. They built a small fire near the back of the cave. Lyra sat with Ash curled against her side, while Ethan warmed his hands by the flames. "This place will be good for him," Lyra said. "He can grow here without fear." Ethan nodded. "He deserves safety." Lyra looked at Ethan with quiet gratitude. "You speak as if you were part of his family." Ethan hesitated. "I don't want to replace anything. He has you." Lyra reached out and gently brushed a hand along Ash's small back. "A child can have many people who care for him," she said. "My mate, he was my strength, my heart. Losing him left a space I thought would never be filled." Ethan lowered his eyes respectfully. Lyra continued in a soft voice. "But when Ash lost his father, he lost part of his light too. I thought losing him completely would break me. Then I found him with you safe, warm, cherished." She looked directly at Ethan. "You gave him something I could not give him alone." Ethan felt a strange warmth in his chest. "I only did what any good person would." Lyra shook her head gently. "Many fear dragons. Many would have run. Many would have tried to capture him. But you carried him home, fed him, held him when he cried. That is not ordinary kindness." Her voice carried honest sincerity. Ethan wasn't used to hearing words like that. They reached deeper places inside him, places he had locked away during the war. Ash climbed onto Ethan's knee, curling up comfortably. Ethan stroked his head. Lyra watched them, her expression softening even more. "You are gentle despite your scars," she said, "and strong despite your pain." Ethan looked into the fire. "I've lost people too. I know how it feels." The cave grew quiet except for the crackling of flames. Lyra shifted closer, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "You are welcome here, Ethan," she said. "For as long as you wish to stay." Ethan nodded slowly. "I would like to stay a while longer. For Ashy and for you." A small smile touched Lyra's lips. It was warm and delicate, the kind of smile that carried hope. The next day, Ethan began helping Lyra build shelters inside the cave. Lyra shaped stone effortlessly, forming smooth walls and pillars with her dragon strength. Ethan built wooden frames for sleeping areas and storage. Ash helped by carrying small sticks in his mouth, proudly delivering them to Ethan. Lyra laughed softly each time Ash stumbled but kept going. "He wants to impress you," she said. Ethan felt something soften inside him. "He's doing a great job." By the third day, the cavern looked like a real home. Ethan built a wooden cooking corner. Lyra carved a warm nest area for Ash. Together, they created a space that felt peaceful, safe, and filled with quiet joy. During the evenings, they sat around the fire again. Ash usually fell asleep first, curled between them. Sometimes Lyra told stories from old dragon traditions, tales of honor, of the sky, of families that stayed strong through storms. Ethan listened with quiet admiration. Other times, Ethan told small pieces of his own life, not the violent parts, but the moments of humanity, the people he once protected, the quiet hopes he still carried. Lyra listened with gentle eyes, never rushing him. As the days passed, something changed between them, not quickly, not suddenly, but in small, steady ways. Lyra walked closer when they traveled outside the cave. Ethan found himself looking for her smile more often. When Ash chirped happily, they both reacted the same way, like two parents sharing pride. One evening, as the light faded outside, Ash slept at their feet while Ethan patched a small crack in the wooden frame. Lyra approached him quietly. "You have brought warmth to this place," she said. Ethan looked up at her. "We built it together." Lyra knelt beside him. "Yes, together." Their eyes met, calm, sincere, full of unspoken feelings. There was no rush, no fear, no pressure. Just the quiet understanding that two lonely lives had slowly begun to connect. Ash stirred softly in his sleep, stretching his wings. Lyra smiled. "He feels safe because he is both of us now." Ethan's heart softened. "I feel safe too," he admitted quietly. Lyra's expression warmed. "Then stay, Ethan. Stay with us." The cave was silent, peaceful, glowing with soft blue light. Ethan nodded slowly. I will. And in that quiet moment, the veteran, the dragon widow, and the small dragon child became something new, something like a family, even if none of them had spoken the word aloud. The sky felt heavier the moment Ethan saw the great shadow moving through the clouds. The full-grown dragon glided with slow, powerful wings, its huge form cutting across the evening light. Ash clung tightly to Ethan's shoulder, trembling not with fear, but with something deeper. The little dragon's tiny heart beat fast against Ethan's neck. Ethan stood perfectly still. He knew dragons were proud, ancient beings. They were not creatures one approached carelessly. But he also knew this dragon was not circling them by accident. She had come because of Ash's cries. The dragon descended with graceful control, landing on a flat, rocky platform not far from where Ethan stood. Her wings folded close to her body, and her tail curved protectively around her feet. She was enormous. Her scales shimmered with blue-silver light, like the surface of a calm ocean under moonlight. Her eyes, bright and sharp, seemed to hold entire stories inside them. Ash made a soft sound, a mixture of excitement and sadness. The large dragon answered with a low, resonant hum that vibrated through the air. Ethan felt the sound in his bones. Slowly, the dragon stepped forward. Ethan swallowed. He didn't reach for his weapon. He didn't dare. Instead, he gently placed a hand on Ash to steady the little creature. It's okay, he whispered. I think she knows you. Ash jumped off Ethan's shoulder and ran toward the great dragon on unsteady legs. The big dragon lowered her head, releasing a deep breath that carried warmth. Ash pressed his small head against her snout, and she nudged him back gently, almost lovingly. Ethan had never seen such a tender moment. For all the danger he had imagined, the great dragon moved with incredible softness. Then something unexpected happened. The dragon's body shifted. Her wings folded differently, and her tall form began to shrink and reshape. Light wrapped around her like soft, rippling water. When the glowing faded, she stood before him not as a giant beast, but as a humanoid woman, tall, elegant, and shining with the same blue-silver glow as her scales. Her hair fell in smooth waves down her back, and her eyes remained bright like polished gems. Her clothes were simple, shaped from natural dragon fabric woven from energy and scales. She looked strong, but also tired, as if she had carried grief for a long time. Ash immediately clung to her leg, chirping happily. Ethan stared in awe. He had heard rumors dragons could take humanoid form, but seeing it with his own eyes was something else entirely. The woman knelt and hugged Ash tightly. A soft smile touched her lips, but tears slipped down her cheeks. She lifted her gaze to Ethan with gratitude shining through her expression. You cared for my child, she said in a clear, gentle voice. I owe you more than words can express. Ethan blinked. He had not expected her to speak so calmly or so sadly. I found him alone in the forest, he said. Cold, hungry, and scared. Her expression darkened with pain. There was a great storm, one fierce enough to destroy our nesting grounds. My mate, he did not survive, and in the chaos, Ash was swept away by the winds. I searched every path, every cave, every forest. I feared he had. She couldn't finish. Ash pressed his tiny head against her chest, and she held him closer. As if reassuring herself he was real, Ethan lowered his eyes respectfully. I'm sorry for your loss. She stood slowly, still holding her child. I am Lyra, she said softly. Last matriarch of my small family, and you, Ethan, the human who kept my child alive. Hearing his name from her mouth surprised him. How did you? I smelled your presence on him, she explained. Your warmth, your home, your firewood, your kindness. A dragon mother can sense those things clearly. Ethan felt strangely embarrassed, as if someone had read a private part of his life. But Lyra's eyes held no judgment, only deep gratitude. Ash, having settled from the excitement, crawled out of her arms and waddled back to Ethan, jumping into his hands. Lyra watched, amazed. He chooses you, she whispered. He trusts you deeply. Ethan's heart gave a small, unexpected ache. We've grown close, he admitted. He's become important to me. Lyra's gaze softened even more. You saved him? Dragons do not forget acts of protection. A low wind swept across the mountain ridge, bringing with it the smell of old smoke and broken stone. Lyra turned her head toward the cliffs. "There's more you should know," she said quietly. "Our home was destroyed not only by the storm. Something else passed through the mountains. Something powerful." Ethan felt his body tense. "Something attacked you?" Lyra nodded. "I do not know what it was. A force of energy, cold, unnatural. It drove many creatures from their homes. I fought to protect Ash, but the storm was too strong. In the chaos, I lost him." Ethan felt anger rise in him. Not the violent anger of war, but the protective kind that pushed him to stand taller. "I'm glad we found you," he said. "Ash missed you." Lyra looked at Ash, then at Ethan. "He also found comfort with you. I can see it in his eyes." Ash chirped again and pressed himself against Ethan's chest. Lyra let out a soft laugh, warm, gentle, and full of relief. "You are not like most humans," she said, stepping closer. "There's kindness in you that reminds me of my mate. Strong, brave, but gentle." Ethan felt heat rise in his face, but he did not look away. Lyra brushed her fingers softly along Ash's small wing, then looked back at Ethan. "I cannot ask you to leave your life," she said softly, "but I would like to repay what you did, and Ash would be heartbroken if you simply disappeared." Ash chirped loudly, as if agreeing. Ethan rubbed the small dragon's head. "I don't want to leave him either." Lyra's eyes brightened just a little, just enough to show hope. She stepped back and motioned toward the path leading deeper into the mountains. "Come with us," she said. "Let us rebuild a safe place. You saved part of our family. Now let us share ours with you." Ethan looked at the mountains, at Lyra, at Ash, a war-hardened veteran, a grieving but strong dragon mother, and a tiny dragon child who loved them both. He took a slow breath and nodded. Lyra smiled softly, the first peaceful smile she had given in years. Together, they began walking toward a new future waiting in the mountains, one none of them could have imagined before fate brought them together. Ethan woke before the suns rose, something he still did out of old habit. For a moment he forgot about the strange discovery from the night before. But when he felt a warm weight on his arm and heard a tiny puff of smoke, everything came back to him. The little dragon was curled tightly against him. Its small wings spread like a blanket, and its tail wrapped around his wrist, as if holding him in place. Ethan slowly sat up, trying not to disturb the creature. But the movement made the dragon yawn, revealing small, harmless teeth and a soft glow inside its throat. "Morning," Ethan whispered. The baby dragon blinked slowly, then climbed up his chest like it was greeting a parent. It made small chirping sounds and bumped its head against his jaw. Ethan felt a gentle warmth in his heart that surprised him. He had seen many dangerous things in war, but nothing had prepared him for how affectionate this little creature was. After making a simple breakfast for himself, just bread and warm tea, Ethan placed small pieces of fruit and cooked vegetables in front of the dragon. The creature sniffed the food, then happily ate while making small satisfied noises. Whenever Ethan moved away, the dragon followed him with quick, clumsy hops, slipping and sliding on the wooden floor. "You're going to be a handful," Ethan muttered, but he said it with a soft smile. He eventually decided the creature needed a name, something simple, something that fit the warm ash color of its scales. "How about Ash?" he said aloud. "Is that fine?" The dragon chirped loudly, flapped its little wings, and climbed onto his shoulder as if accepting the name proudly. Ethan chuckled. "Ash it is." As the day continued, Ethan tried to learn more about dragons using the old data pad he kept in his cabin. Most of the information was incomplete or centuries old. Dragons had been last seen regularly a long time ago. Records said they lived high in mountain caves, stayed far from humans, and protected their families fiercely. Nothing mentioned why one would leave a tiny baby alone in a cold forest. Ethan wondered if something terrible had happened. Every time he thought about Ash being alone and scared, he felt a small ache inside his chest. The child deserved better than wandering cold nights without a family. Ethan looked at Ash, who was now sleeping inside one of his boots like it was the safest place in the world. "I'll find your mother," he said quietly. I promise. For the next few days, Ethan prepared for a long trip. He packed sturdy clothes, warm blankets, food, and a few tools. Ash watched him curiously, sometimes trying to steal the rope or tug at the backpack straps. At night, Ash slept close to him, sometimes on his chest, sometimes curled beside his neck. The soft warmth made Ethan sleep better than he had in years. But something strange happened on the fourth morning. Ethan stepped outside to gather firewood when a faint rumble echoed over the distant mountains. Ash, who had been playing near the window, froze. His little wings twitched. He stared toward the mountains as if he sensed something calling him. Ethan followed the direction of Ash's gaze. The mountains stood tall, dark, and mysterious. Fog covered the highest peaks, making them look like ancient guardians watching the land. Something about the rumble felt unnatural, like a distant roar or cry carried by the wind. Ash made a soft, sad sound. You know something? Ethan murmured. That was the final push he needed. He strapped the pack on his back, tightened his boots, and placed Ash carefully inside his thick cloak. The dragon curled up comfortably, peeking out with bright golden eyes. We're going to find who you belong to, Ethan promised. The forest path was long, filled with uneven stones, tall roots, and cold winds. But Ash's presence made the journey feel less lonely. Sometimes the little dragon climbed out of his cloak and perched on his shoulder, watching birds fly across the sky. Other times, Ash rested calmly, trusting Ethan completely. When Ethan stopped for breaks, Ash explored nearby bushes, chasing insects or rolling in patches of soft grass. Every time Ash wandered too far, he looked back to make sure Ethan was still there. It warmed the veteran's heart more than he expected. On the second night of their journey, they camped near a river. The water glimmered under the moonlight, spreading a calm silver glow. Ash played in the shallow edge, splashing tiny droplets while puffing miniature clouds of steam. Ethan sat nearby, watching with quiet amusement. You really don't act like a creature of legend, he said. Ash jumped out of the water and shook himself like a wet puppy, sending droplets everywhere. Ethan tried not to laugh too loudly. As the fire burned gently, Ash crawled into Ethan's lap and curled up into a warm, soft ball. Ethan stroked the small scales on its back, feeling the gentle warmth rising through them. The dragon relaxed, eyes half closed, trusting him completely. You're a good kid, Ethan whispered. I hope your mother is safe. They continued traveling for several more days. The deeper they went into the mountains, the more signs Ethan noticed: burned tree trunks, cracked stones, and deep claw marks across the rocks. Ash reacted each time, his small body tensing, wings trembling slightly. Something had indeed happened here. But the path also carried hope. On the sixth day, they found a half-burned nest built from smooth stones and warm soil. Ash rushed toward it, chirping loudly. He sniffed the stones and pressed his head against them with a sad whimper. Ethan knelt beside him. This was your home, wasn't it? He gently touched the stones. They were still faintly warm for a nest abandoned long ago. Someone had been here recently. Maybe Ash's mother. Maybe she was still searching. Ethan stood up and looked toward the towering cliffs ahead. We're close. They traveled deeper. The wind grew sharper, carrying the faint smell of smoke. Ash suddenly lifted his head, eyes bright. He let out a small cry and flapped his wings rapidly. You sense something, Ethan said. They climbed a final ridge, and when they reached the peak, Ash let out another chirp, this time louder. Full of longing, Ethan followed his gaze into the sky. A massive shadow moved through the clouds, graceful and powerful, the shape of a full-grown dragon. Ethan felt his heart stop. Ash spread his tiny wings, trembling with excitement, and far above them, the great creature began to descend slowly, carefully, as if answering the call of a lost child. The journey to find Ash's family had finally brought them to the moment that would change everything. Ethan had lived alone for many years, far from busy cities and far from the noise of war. He was a human veteran who had survived too many battles, and he now preferred silence more than anything else. His small cabin stood at the edge of a quiet frontier world, where tall trees, old mountains, and wide blue skies filled the land. Some days the wind was the only thing that spoke to him. Other days, he simply sat outside with a cup of warm tea and watched the sun set. Peace was something he had earned, and he wanted nothing more than to keep it. But one cold evening changed his quiet life forever. Ethan was returning from a long walk through the forest. The sky was turning dark purple, and soft frost glimmered on the ground. As he stepped between the tall pine trees, a strange sound reached his ears. It was not the growl of an animal, nor the rustle of leaves. It was a small, trembling cry, high and thin, like a frightened child trying not to be heard. Ethan stopped immediately. His instincts from the battlefield never left him. He scanned the trees, the rocks, and the shadows. Then the sound came again, more desperate this time. It sounded weak, scared, and alone. Ethan slowly moved toward it, keeping his steps light. The forest grew colder as he walked deeper, and the wind brushed frost against his skin. Behind a fallen log, under a few broken branches, he finally saw something moved out at first. He thought it was a wounded animal, but when he crouched down, he saw glowing golden eyes staring back at him wide, round, and filled with fear. A tiny creature no bigger than his forearm sat curled up in the leaves. It had little wings pressed tightly against its back, a small tail that twitched nervously, and scales the color of warm ash. Smoke puffed weakly from its tiny nostrils with every shivering breath. Ethan froze in surprise. It was a baby dragon. Dragons were rare, almost legends now. They stayed away from humans and lived in high mountains where no one dared enter. Seeing even an adult dragon was rare, but a lost baby dragon? That was something no one would ever believe. The little dragon tried to back away, but its legs were too weak. It looked injured or exhausted. It whimpered softly, trying to hide its head under its wings. Ethan slowly lowered himself to one knee. His voice came out calm and gentle, the same tone he once used to comfort scared young soldiers on the battlefield. "Hey there," he whispered. "I'm not going to hurt you." The small dragon watched him carefully. Its golden eyes trembled. Ethan extended a hand but did not touch it. He simply waited, letting the creature decide. The cold air made the dragon shiver again, and it let out a tiny sneeze that released a puff of warm smoke. The sight almost made Ethan smile. "Poor thing," he murmured. The dragon finally inched forward, moving so slowly that Ethan barely breathed. Then, with a soft hop, it crawled into his open hands. Its small claws were gentle, its body warm, and its heart beat fast like a frightened bird. Ethan lifted it carefully and wrapped it inside his thick coat to protect it from the cold. The baby dragon made a soft chirping sound and pressed its head against his chest. Ethan felt something strange inside him, an old feeling he had almost forgotten. It was the quiet, warm feeling of someone depending on him, someone who trusted him without fear. He held the little creature gently and made a silent promise that he would not abandon it. The walk back to his cabin was slow because he didn't want to disturb the small dragon. Resting against him, snowflakes drifted down from the sky as he traveled through the forest. By the time he reached the cabin door, the creature was bundled deep in his coat. Breathing softly inside, the warm firelight filled the room. Ethan set the baby dragon near the fireplace on a soft blanket. The creature gave a tiny yawn that released another puff of smoke. Ethan laughed quietly, not a loud laugh, but the soft kind he hadn't felt in years. He prepared warm water and placed small pieces of cooked vegetables in front of the dragon. The creature sniffed the food, unsure at first, then began to eat slowly. When it finished, it curled up on the blanket, wrapping its tail around itself. Ethan watched it closely. "Where did you come from?" he asked softly. "Where is your family?" The dragon blinked at him but gave no answer. Of course it couldn't speak yet. It only stared at him with those bright eyes. And something in its gaze made Ethan feel like he was being trusted completely. He sat beside the fire, thinking. Dragons rarely travel close to human lands. Something must have pushed this little one far from home danger, storms, or maybe something worse. Ethan felt a strong responsibility. Leaving the dragon outside would have been cruel. Keeping it without searching for its family felt wrong too. He sighed heavily. "I guess we're stuck together for now," he whispered. The tiny creature crawled toward him and placed its head on his knee. Ethan froze in surprise. Then he slowly stroked the top of its small head. The dragon closed its eyes with contentment. His cabin had never felt so alive. Later that night, Ethan made a small bed for the dragon using spare blankets. But the creature refused to stay away from him. It waddled across the floor, climbed clumsily onto his couch, and curled into a small ball right beside him. Its little tail wrapped around his arm like it didn't want to let go. Ethan stared at the ceiling, helpless and unsure whether to laugh or sigh. "Your trouble," he whispered. But inside his heart, something soft was unfolding. He had seen too many terrible things in war. He had lost friends, homes, and parts of himself he could never get back. Yet here was a small creature, weak, lost, and innocent, choosing him as the person it trusted. He did not understand why, but he felt something. He had not felt in a long time, a sense of purpose. As the fire cracked softly, and the little dragon breathed lightly against him, Ethan realized that his quiet life was about to change. He had no idea what adventures were waiting beyond the forest, or who the little dragon truly belonged to, but deep inside, he knew one thing clearly: he would protect the tiny creature with everything he had. A new bond had formed, unexpected, fragile, and powerful, and it was only the beginning.